Well, if people come, they come. It's wonderful to see all of you. Hi, I see so many familiar faces. Thank you so much for coming to our session today on schools. As you just saw in the main stage session, I think that couldn't have asked for a better lead-in by Secretary Vilsack. I think he talked about schools 2 or 3 times. And I'm Alex Nichols-Vinueza. I'm our Director of Food Waste at World Wildlife Fund. I help to support a program called Food Waste Warriors, which since 2019 has worked with roughly 250 schools, mainly Title I schools, across 30 states. We really try to drive interactive, hands-on materials, toolkits in Spanish and English to teach kids about the food system and how reducing food waste can reduce those impacts. And I am joined by a stellar panel today, who I'll have introduce themselves in just a minute. We have Ann Rosenthal, who is from the Baltimore School District, who, let's first of all give a hand to Ann for hosting us here in Baltimore. It's been amazing. Who is a farm to school specialist in the Food Nutrition Services Department. We have Leann Edwards, one of our also wonderful partners from Clean Memphis, a program director for the Project Green Fork. And then we also have Brandy, I'm gonna butcher your name, I'm sorry, Dreibelbis? Dreibelbis, from the Executive Director of Culinary at Chef Ann Foundation. And unfortunately, Nora LaTorre from Eat Real had a meeting come up in DC and was not able to join us, but I will do my best to impersonate Nora on a few of these speaking points here today. But before we get started, I just want to take stock of who is in the room. I want to know who, just raise your hand, who here works in a school today? Okay, we got a school. Who works with schools as potentially a partner? There we go. Okay, great. Who here is from maybe a food service company or a food company? Okay, good. We got some food businesses. Curious off of that, we've got so many big food businesses here. Who do you all think is the biggest fast food restaurant in the country? Subway, okay. Any other guesses? What more? Oh, he got me. I thought I had y'all. Okay, you're too smart. It's actually the school lunch program, right? That's one of the wings, and this is me, do my best to impersonate Nora here too, I know. And so one of the things that we really want to talk about today and why this matters, like you heard Secretary Vilsack say, is that this is not just about, reducing school food waste and it's just a small problem. We did a study on this back in 2019. This is 530,000 tons a year. And we're also talking about the way that the food is sourced, right? When we talk about the impacts that wasted food has and the missed opportunity it has in teaching kids about the food system, right? Which is something we all care about, which is something you all care about. And so we really want to talk about the intersection that, again, Secretary Vilsack, thank you so much, teed up perfectly, right? Thinking about how we're bringing in more nutritious food, better tasting food that kids will want to eat so that they're less likely to waste it and they'll have better nutrition outcomes. So I am thrilled, again, to be with this panel. I'd like them to just quickly introduce themselves in their own words. So, Ann, over to you. Can maybe each of us just tell us in a minute about what you do and why you're passionate about this?
Thank you, Alex. I'm Ann Rosenthal. I am part of the Baltimore City Public School District. So welcome to Charm City. I hope you all have some time to enjoy. I have been with the district about 6 years, and my role is very unique. My title is Farm to School Specialist. I sit within the Food and Nutrition Services Department, and my whole job basically is to give students experiential learning opportunities to connect them to their food system and to nature. That's my main job, but that ties into a lot of special projects within food and nutrition generally. So within our kind of food services operations, I also work a lot on food waste. Some of that has to do with experiential learning. And I'll talk to you more about this as we go, but thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm Leann Edwards. I'm the program director of Project Green Fork, which is a program of Clean Memphis in Memphis, Tennessee. And our mission is to develop a sustainable food system for all Memphians, and we do that through food waste reduction and connecting local partners like our school district, and also socializing this idea of green dining as a practice. Prior to my work with Project Green Fork, I worked with the Memphis Shelby County School System as their culinary specialist. So my main job there was to write recipes in lines with the guidelines and then train on offer versus serve, which is the way that we follow regulations in the school lunch line, breakfast and lunch line. And so these two worlds have tied together really nicely with a lot of support from World Wildlife Fund. Really excited to talk to you about it.
Hi everyone, my name is Brandy Dreibelbis. I'm very happy to be here as kind of a last minute addition to this panel. I am the Executive Director of Culinary for the Chef Ann Foundation. And if you're not familiar with the Chef Ann Foundation, we are a national nonprofit that's been around since 2009. So we will actually be celebrating our 15th anniversary this year, which is super exciting. And our mission is to work with school districts that are in that process of transitioning from a process heat and serve program to more scratch cooking, because we believe that that's how kids have the best access to fresh fruits and vegetables, to whole grains, and to high quality proteins. And we do that through a variety of resources, tools, grants, funding opportunities, and technical assistance.
Wonderful. We're so honored to have all of you. And I'm going to quickly just introduce Nora, again, who really regrets not being able to come here, had a meeting come up in DC. But she leads Eat Real, which is, also similarly looking at how to get scratch cooking, how to really change the food that gets into schools so that it's healthier, it's food that kids are going to want to eat. And really, how do we lift up and tell those stories? How do we make it easier to get that food into the kitchens? How do we connect folks like all of you who are doing that work around the country to champion that? And then how to connect that to policy advocacy to make that easier. So I will, again, do my best to impersonate Nora as we go throughout. I want to start with one real question, which is that, we talk about food waste. Secretary Vilsack mentioned this again. How do you connect food waste to some of the other competing priorities? Because it is a competing priority. When we go into schools, we say, look, on paper, this is the solution. Just do X, Y, Z. Make school lunches longer, right? Make the food better. Set up this bulk milk dispenser, right? Could you all maybe talk briefly about just what are some of the realities that you face in your jobs and in the work you do with schools to getting this work done on the ground?
Well, I have the microphone, so I guess I'll start. So I think a lot of it comes down to time and staff turnover, barriers with infrastructure in the schools that might be aging. School systems, Memphis Shelby County Schools is a very large school system. We have about 200 schools that we serve. It's spread widely across a county. There has to be input from the board. There has to be input from Food and Nutrition Services, so getting a lot of people working together. But really there are barriers to how much time our staff has in a day and how we implement these things. Sometimes it's helpful as an outside entity now looking in. We can give them support on programs like their share tables or how they are teaching about offer versus serve to their students. In Memphis Shelby County, 1 in 4 of our students is actually hungry. And we have community eligibility, so all students eat breakfast and lunch and snacks for free, thanks very much to the USDA reimbursement. And so how do we make sure those students are eating that food as well? Really getting in front of them with, I know you're going to talk more about this as far as farm to school goes, with what's on their lunch line. If you're living in a food desert and you're not normally seeing this food that's put in front of you for school lunch or school breakfast, how can we help you understand what you're eating, give you tasting opportunities for it? So I think I just ran the gamut of all sorts of problems that we have, but I would say time, staffing, and lack of knowledge about the kinds of foods being served and the program itself is tough.
I think one of the most impactful things that I do in my role as the executive director of culinary when I'm providing technical assistance to a school district is help them with their menu. We believe that everything starts with the menu. We believe in a cycle menu, a 4 to 6 week cycle menu that repeats itself throughout the school year. And if you can get a school district, a school food program to get on board with that and create a true cycle menu, that helps with your forecasting so you're not overproducing food. It helps your staff develop work patterns because they become more familiar with the recipes that you're cooking. It helps you with your buying power. You can leverage more procurement dollars. It helps you work with growers to grow the exact amount of food that you need so you're not producing extra waste as well. So I think that from a culinary perspective in schools, everything really starts with a cycle menu.
Yeah, I would just add, so I have the unique position again of sitting within the Food and Nutrition Services department within the district, which means there are lots of challenges like, preoccupation. Most of our staff their number one priority in terms of food services is food safety and health of students. So they've been trained, they've been audited, they've been certified on food safety, and that's like their number one priority when they come to work every day. So anything that sits outside of that is new, and you have to make a really compelling case of why it should be a priority for them. But I was going to say that we're also, another benefit of being within the district is that we're linked very closely with the academic department. So we have, since we're embedded, we can connect with them easily and make the case that all of our food waste reduction efforts can really also support their goals. So I think one of the challenges is that food waste often fits outside, or like sits outside of what people see as their primary goal in the morning, which whether it's teaching science, serving breakfast in a safe way, or teaching a civics, or leading a civics club after school. So I think maybe I don't want to jump to the solutions. I'm happy. I thought I was going to be talking all about challenges, but one quick lead into that I'll say is trying to find ways to make food waste a really central, make people see food waste reduction as a central part of their strategies to meet their goals, whether it's serving healthy meals to students and their families, whether it's reinforcing scientific concepts, whether it's, connecting it to lessons about civics or activism in their community, connecting the dots in a really concrete way and making it seem just as big an operational priority as those other things I mentioned can be helpful. So.
Really well said. I mean, one quick practical example is that we talk a lot about shared tables. Secretary Vilsack brought that up as well. You walk in and, like you just said, with food safety, and there's signs all over the cafeteria because of allergens and other reasons that say, do not share food, right? And then you're telling the kids at the same time, please put uneaten food or put that uneaten apple on the table so that another kid can take it with them. So those are those realities, right, that we're dealing with. But okay, we're not here to drone on about the negative. What is working? What are some things that you can share with this lovely audience on some things that you really are seeing move the needle and that you're excited about? So go ahead.
Okay, I can start with the positive. So we try to think really big picture. When we think about food waste reduction in the district, we want to think about composting. We want to think about share tables, but my mandate when I was hired was really to work with a team to bring farm to school educational opportunities for life to students so that they kind of at a really high level have this transformational experience, digging in the dirt, harvesting a carrot, tugging the carrot out of the ground, tasting a tomato off the vine. Some of you were visited on my field trip yesterday to Great Kids Farm, so we're really, really lucky to have a learning farm that's owned and operated by Food Nutrition Services, part of the district again, so it's very weird. We're an urban district, obviously, but we have this beautiful 120-year-old farm that we use as an educational hub. So the team there is focused on experiential learning for students, learning that is also linked to curricula that they're learning in the classroom. We also push into schools, lead farm to classroom experiences. We have professional development for teachers. So again, really centering food education and food system education, giving students a way to really have that hands-on, transformative experience. Like I said, we bring them, connect them to champions in the community already doing this work, like Marvin Hayes in the back, Baltimore Compost Collective, urban farms in their neighborhood, so that it's more painful for them to throw out that baby carrot in the cafeteria, but so that they're more open and more enthusiastic about trying a cherry tomato on their cafeteria tray when they remember having tasted or planted the tomato on the farm. So that kind of baseline appreciation we think is really important. One other thing I wanted to mention is that we've also tried really hard to link whatever's happening in the educational space, whether it's on the farm or in the classroom, back to the cafeteria, and to link what's happening in the cafeteria to the farm and the classroom. So breaking down, I would really emphasize the importance of breaking down the barrier between the cafeteria staff and everyone else in the building. This may seem minor, but encouraging principals to incorporate the cafeteria staff into their back to school events, any kind of community family engagement event. We invite cafeteria managers to farm field trips to really build them up as champions of healthful eating so that students really can make the connection between the people who are serving the meals every day, the broader food system in which hopefully they can see themselves as participants, and building up and giving staff the opportunity to learn about food waste. We haven't done as good a job of this in the past couple years, but I remember maybe 3 years ago, our director rented a movie theater and screened a documentary about food waste for all of our cafeteria staff as part of a professional development opportunity for them. So really building them, giving them the opportunity to see themselves as champions of food waste. So it's, again, they see it as much a part of their work as, checking the temperature of the milk at the beginning of every meal. So I'll stop there. But
I'm so glad you said that about the cafeteria staff, because it brought something to mind that I think is very important. A lot of times the cafeteria staff is employed by Food Nutrition Services, which is an offshoot of the district at large, but sometimes they don't, collaborate as well as we hopefully could or can in the future. But one thing that I do think in the back to school is very helpful that Memphis Shelby County Schools implemented, the cafeteria staff would come to these back to school events and do a setup of what a traditional school lunch would be, which impacts the way that parents get to see school lunch, because I have a child in the district, and I was in charge of her meals for a long time, and I will tell you, she came back and told me some wild stories. So if you put what actually is going out to the students in front of the parents, then they can really relate to what's happening at the school district and maybe question when your child tells you they were handed frozen broccoli. I don't know. That's an aside. A couple of other things that worked really well for us was implementing this Grow, Taste, See program through the Farm to School operation. We have a mobile kitchen that goes into the classrooms. We bring a farmer, we bring a dietitian, and then we prepare the food that they're maybe going to see in their fresh fruit and vegetable program, or something new that's going to be on the school lunch menu. Talk about where it came from. The dietitian is there to talk about how it's good for them and why they should try it. And then they get to take that as a chance to taste something that maybe they've never seen before and recognize it when they're in the school lunch line. So that's been very valuable. As an employee of Clean Memphis, we have educators who are going into the schools regularly to teach environmental education, and there is a food waste reduction program involved in that that's tied directly into their curriculum. So we teach the students how to do a food waste audit, fourth graders, and then we bring them in to lead the food waste audit in the schools. They're sorting it. They're seeing what's happening. They're seeing the apple that comes up that someone has stabbed with their plastic knife, and it's just not usable for the share table anymore. Things are really impactful when you see how much milk is going into the bucket. And they then go back and tell their friends, like, I saw your apple that you poked all those holes in. They're good shamers. They're educators, also known as shamers. Like Secretary Vilsack said, they're great at coming home and telling their parents what they're doing wrong. So putting them in the middle of that is really, really helpful. And it's great for us, too, because when we're doing these food waste audits, we can see collectively where there are training opportunities, whether it's getting in front of the students on a broader scale and teaching them about what they can choose or don't have to choose on the lunch line, or getting in front of the cafeteria staff. We go back to the school district with tactical information. What we noticed is every child at lunch had a milk today. The likelihood of that being a choice made by every child is slim. So someone thinks they have to take a milk. And that gives the school district an opportunity to go in and do training on that. That's been very, very valuable for us. We noticed that there was a specific roll that every kid was taking one bite of and throwing away. So we went back to the district and said, something is up with this roll. And they changed the role. There are things that maybe they are trying to think of food safety and meeting the guidelines and worried about not serving enough food or not serving enough components. When you're an outside eye and you can say, hey, I noticed this is something specific you can do to save yourself money, feed the children, they're very apt to come on board.
I would have to say that salad bars are going really well. We're huge advocates of salad bars at the Chef Foundation. We believe that there's a home for a salad bar in every school cafeteria in the country. We believe that if you're using them correctly, which means that you're using them as part of the reimbursable meal, so the kids are required to take something from the salad bar with each meal period, that is directly leading to less plate waste because they're not automatically being plated from the service line, maybe a hot veg that they're not interested in eating, which oftentimes ends up in the garbage can. If you're stocking those salad bars in bulk, then you're eliminating those prepackaged fruits and vegetables that we often see on the service lines in school cafeterias. Salad bars also encourage kids to take what they want and eat what they take. They also directly relate to more fresh fruits and vegetables that are consumed. And we call it the gateway to scratch cooking as well.
So some of the themes I heard were really engaging with the food service staff, right? So that they can be a champions to students in this fight. And then I think that, we also heard getting a feedback loop, right? Using the data that you're collecting to understand what is not being eaten and why, that is just having one bite and being thrown out. And then there is plenty of evidence, right, that if you, through a farm to school program, for instance, if you're connecting kids to where their food comes from, they're much less likely to want to waste it. They feel more connected. They understand where it came from. So there is a direct link there between thinking about how the food is being sourced and served and then to waste that I think we all understand. I want to talk about some of the bigger impacts outside of the four walls of the school, right? You heard this a little bit from Secretary Vilsack, who again just teed us up perfectly, so I'm going to keep going back to that. They do go home and bug their parents. They do go home and can be a change maker in their communities. This isn't just about what's happening at the schools. Schools may not be the biggest source of waste in a community, but they're so important for going home and driving those wider impacts. So think about that as, kind of downstream past the school. But then you all do so much work on thinking about how food is sourced, right? And how you can think about this intersection between waste and reducing the impacts of how food is produced. So could you all maybe talk about some of those opportunities here with the work that you're doing to reduce the overall upstream and downstream impacts?
I would say, beyond just the instilling habits that we hope students will extend into their households and futures, I think when we're talking about big school districts, we're talking also about building markets for more composting, showing haulers that actually we have tons and tons of waste for you to haul, organic waste, and we really need a place for it, and we're already paying for our waste to be hauled, so we'd prefer to pay you to haul and recycle organic. So I think we're also talking about building markets, especially at when we're talking about a city without municipal composting, you're really talking about the biggest food chain in the country. So there's really scale. Same thing, when we're talking about purchasing compostable materials, huge market. We don't have dishwashers in our cafeterias, so everything we use, unfortunately, gets tossed, but we have compostable. We're talking again about building a market on the front end for dishes and wares. And then I think from a recovery, I don't know, maybe others will talk more about recovery, but thinking about where the food can go after, when we do have successful share tables, we do have even hopefully one day in our case, back of the house recovery, where is that going, and making sure we're connecting and building out infrastructure for logistics that can also serve other kind of contexts and communities.
When a school district is making the switch from process, heat, and serve to scratch cooking, all of a sudden they're going from buying these prepackaged, pre-made, expensive items to more raw ingredients. And when you are making that transition to raw ingredients, you have the ability to procure food more locally. You have the opportunity to meet growers, meet producers in your area, and directly spend those dollars in your local community and give back to the area as well.
You all you all have such a unique vantage point, I guess, within schools. You're not just working on waste, you're also thinking about how the food is coming in the door. Can you talk about, we say scratch cooking, and why don't we just do scratch cooking, right? Can you talk about what are some of the tactics to help schools get more of that fresh scratch cooking into their meal service?
Well, first and foremost, I'm going to go back to the comment I made about cycle menus. That's one of the first thing we do is help them create a cycle menu that repeats itself throughout the school year. We also help them limit the amount of items that they're serving on their menu each day. We believe in one main item district-wide, a vegetarian item every day as well, and then possibly for older kids, one additional item. We believe in offer versus serve. So for those of you who aren't familiar, that means that the kids only are required to take 3 of the 5 components, so they're not automatically plated something that they may not eat as well.
I also want to give a shout out to the Chef Ann Foundation for their bulk milk grant program. They have a bulk milk dispenser, I've been told, upstairs on the 4th floor that you can check out, which goes with this idea of offer versus serve. Instead of giving everyone milk, whether they like milk or not, they can go and serve themselves the amount that they will actually drink. My son would drink 6 glasses, my daughter wouldn't drink any, right? So it's as simple as that.
One thing that our school district is doing is, because it is so large and it's very hard to get local farmers who are able to supply the whole school district with the amount of produce that they need to start this scratch cooking They're trying to make co-ops of farmers who can then send it through someone who is able to transport to our schools directly, which is, I think, such a great way to do it. It really leans into what the farmers are able to provide. It gives them additional sales for sure, but also gives us access to bring the farmers into the schools and say, look, this is where your apples came from today. But most of them just cannot do that unless they have these co-ops that they can work together.
Let's go back to this idea of how students can become advocates, or just some habits that you've really seen them pick up. I want to give a shout out. We've got Joe Richardson in the audience, who helped to work with an amazing group of students who unfortunately couldn't be here today, from Maryland, who not only reduced food waste in their schools and helped set up composting programs, they then went and trained other schools, younger students across the county, mainly Title I schools, and then organized a statewide postcard writing campaign to help pass a state bill that would then provide additional funding for schools to really teach food waste as part of their education and to do something about it. So yeah, give an applause to Joe and the team. We are not just saying, hey, student, this isn't some rosy idea. This is real. Students can be amazing advocates for this much more than a lot of times any of us could be. So could you maybe just talk about where you've seen those opportunities, or just, you mentioned salad bars, Brandy. Like, how are you getting kids to eat from salad bars? I remember those growing up, and they were just like this lifeless iceberg lettuce that I don't think anyone touched. So, I mean, how are you getting kids to adopt these habits?
A couple things. When we implement a salad bar in a school district or in a school, we often recommend that they create a seasonal salad bar grid. So then the school district is purchasing the food when it's at its peak, when it's the least expensive, but when it tastes the best as well. So then kids are trying things maybe for the first time when it tastes the best as well, and they're getting on board with it. We also run events called Rainbow Days, where we give away salads to every student, whether they pack their lunch from home or they bought school lunch that day. And we encourage them to try 3 or more colors of things, and they get a sticker that says, I ate a rainbow at the salad bar today. And it's, they go home and they talk about it with their parents as well. And so that's something fun that really encourages produce consumption as well.
Really empowering them to make the change at their school. And kids love fun outside of the classroom time. They also really love gross. So a food waste audit is actually incredible. It gives them everything they want. We got these little lab coats donated from St. Jude, who is a great partner of ours in Memphis. So they feel very nicely dressed and ready to go. And then just dig into what's going on in their own cafeterias and take that back to their classrooms. And they've already we do lots of offer versus serve training with them before they do the food waste audit. So we have them make meals on trays and say, is this a reimbursable meal? And they say yes or no, and you would be amazed at what is considered a meal for them sometimes. Like, I would never. But anyway, so they are forming these habits because they're learning what they're throwing away and what their friends are doing, and taking it home and talking to their parents, which I mentioned before.
And I like, Leann, before you go in, what you said too about giving them the chance to taste some of these foods in a low pressure setting. It's not during lunch when all your friends are watching and you're trying to be cool and you're trying to impress everyone. It's in this sort of, less, like, more of a low pressure setting, which I also think is a good way to get them to adopt those rainbow foods.
Yeah, I think this connects to a lot of what I said in my first answer, which is like breaking down, introducing them to their cafeteria manager, like making sure they see that those staff behind the line as like real champions of healthy eating, so they're not just skeptical and like grossed out by the iceberg lettuce, whatever. So that's one thing. And then I think from a district perspective, giving schools tools to make it really easy. I'm looking at Caitlin Harper, who's helped with our food waste audits this year and food waste measurements, making sure that that we can give schools easy guidance. If a teacher's never led a food waste audit, has never thought of a food waste audit, how can they give a lot of students this kind of firsthand experience with with an audit and a measurement, getting their hands dirty, physically scraping stuff off a tray, getting gross. So thinking about scaling from a district perspective, what tools can we give teachers to make it easy to engage students? What can we work with academics to make sure that every 6th grade science class has an extension of a food waste audit? Can we work with social studies and in high school, to make sure that they're also focused on getting some kind of like hands-on food systems experience at some point in their curriculum. And I think making kind of scaling as much as possible, but also making sure we're being flexible. So in our guidance to schools on food waste audits, making sure we're not saying it has to be the green team leader. It could also be the vice principal or the social worker or whoever. So making sure it's really flexible and that schools can work within their restraints, and yes, we're helping them meet their goals as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I mean, you've not heard one of these folks say that this is on teachers to go and do, right? Teachers are, obviously a huge part of this food waste education journey, but it is a whole school approach, and it's about customizing this to the specific motivations of these different stakeholders that you've heard us talk about today. I'm going to ask just a couple more questions, and then I want to open it up to the wider crew and get a good discussion going. So, look, everyone in this room has either a family member or a neighbor at a school that they care about. They live by a school. What can everyone here in this room do? What are some things that they can do to really help support this transition to us sourcing more regionally and regeneratively sourced foods, better foods that go into the school and how it's served, and then reducing the waste of that food once it's in it?
I think first and foremost, it's important, if you're interested in making a change in your local home school, that you are educating yourself on how the National School Lunch Program works. I think a lot of people that aren't connected to a school district don't really understand that and all the rules and regulations. I mean, it's very hard. It's a complicated system. And then starting to talk to administrators in the school district, food service directors, superintendents, school board members about possibly what can be done, because changing a school food program is bigger than just the school food program. It's a whole district problem.
Yeah, I would say hopefully, so my first instinct was be a cheerleader for school meals. If you have a child at a school, try to start by giving the school the benefit of the doubt and assume they're trying to serve healthy meals. See if there's a way for you to taste the meal. A lot of parents, including, like I was just with my cousins, and they were saying our kids have never tried our school meals. They live in LA, and whatever. So I was encouraging them just to try it, or send their kids, ask their kids one day to try the school meal. So start with like curiosity and enthusiasm rather than the default, which tends to be like the stigmatized. We always say everyone loves to hate school meals, like for generations. Everyone has hated school meals, so that's what we're up against. So there's still a lot of room for improvement, obviously, I will concede. But I would say start with like an open mind and curiosity about the actual systems that dictate everything we do. And then, but also, in a very concrete way, if you have time, there's very likely a very concrete way your school administrator would love to have your support, whether it's hauling a little bit of compost to a local farm, or volunteering as a share table monitor, or to lead a food waste audit, or even, you can connect them or ask if there's a green team leader who could use a little support after school with some hands-on experiences, that kind of thing. So hopefully there will be something concrete. Just remember that at each school, the champion for food waste reduction could be very different. At one school, the principal will be all in. Another school, it's the social worker, the science teacher, whatever. So just remember, it may not always be like a one-shot win. Yeah.
So when I worked for the district, one thing that I tried to implement on my team was, if you're in a school, you need to eat school lunch at the tables with the students and talk to them about what they're eating, talk to them about what's on the plate, what's offered to them, why they made the choices they make, what they see every day. Tell them that you're not afraid to eat what is on your tray, because there is that stigma that you were talking about, Anne. And there's this feeling that an adult wouldn't eat what you're feeding us, which is wild. They really work hard to get quality food in the cafeteria. So if you're a parent or a community member, and you're, like Anne was saying, and your school will allow you to come in and volunteer in some way, if you have the ability to sit down and eat with the students, you can see the reality of what's on their plates and hear from them. I would also encourage you to go out and find community events where you can learn more about food waste reduction and what's happening. Clean Memphis hosts community events very often. When we do, we always have our educators on site. The educators run something for the kids, so that the kids can be learning about where their food comes from, where it goes, which is eye-opening for people a whole lot of the time, and the parents are right there with them. So as a family, you're able to learn about where your food is coming from and then what's happening to it.
All right, thank you all. So taking some empathy, right, into the situation first and foremost, walking the walk, right, and eating some of these foods, and coming at it with curiosity. I think some of the things that I heard. And Pete and SJ on my team, raise your hands really quick if you want to learn more about how to do a food waste audit. Come talk to these two in the back. We've got those on our website through our Food Waste Warriors curriculum. But let's give our panelists here a round of applause. Thank you so much. Yeah. Let's open it up now to some questions. And if you want to ask a question, please come up and use the mic if you don't mind, or I can come find you. Or yell, Pete.
So let's say Secretary Vilsack was here and he asked you, how would you spend $10 million on the school food lunch program to reduce food waste? How would you do that? Like, what would you use for it? And this may or may not be hypothetical. So.
Is he like behind the door or something? Wow.
Recorded.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, may need a minute to refine my thought. I think the first thing, so we're very lucky already to have an investment in farm to school education. So like, again, getting these hands-on experiences for students. So I think having that embedded within a school district is huge. So any support the USDA can give for those like food systems education programs would be really awesome. I think investment in like infrastructure, kitchens, we don't have dishwashers that blocks that we can't apply for the bulk milk grant. Like there are certain infrastructural barriers that really limit what schools can do, even if our staff like really have the will to scratch cook, et cetera. So infrastructure for school kitchens. I have a lot of other thoughts. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, I would just back that infrastructure up for sure. A lot of the aging schools specifically, they don't even have what's needed to have code for running burners. So the infrastructure budget sits within our board, and the food and nutrition services budget is completely separate, and they have to get permission to spend the money from the board to get the coding or everything up to code or whatever. So having a real influx of cash where they can get that happening, get updated stoves and steamers and all of that. Some of our kitchens are reduced to only having an oven, and if you want to make spaghetti in an oven, as the recipe writer, it's a nightmare. So, that's a huge thing, and it's a big expense.
I definitely agree with infrastructure, and I think I would also add hands-on training and technical assistance. Oftentimes, school food professionals don't have that culinary background, and they need a little extra training about maybe being more efficient in the kitchen, and that can directly help food waste as well. The state of California has done a really great job with what's called KIT funding, and it stands for Kitchen Infrastructure Training Dollars, and that has really helped with those areas that we're talking about in the state of California over the last couple of years as well.
Yeah, and I'll take the mic again, just to say, I think, again, I don't know, for better or for worse, I'm thinking like bigger picture, USDA dollars in general, like more reimbursement per meal. I mean, when we talk about investment in our staff beyond training, like we need to be able to pay them more. We always come back to like staff, we can't serve this, we can't serve that because we have staff shortages, and that's because they're not getting paid enough. They're not, in some districts, they're not benefited, they're not, we need to incentivize them to be these champions for students. So that's one thing I'll say, maybe beyond the whatever food waste reduction specific lens. And then also our director is actually trying to get funding for a pilot of free meals for all staff in the building. So the meals would be the same meals the students are eating. This would serve, we're doing this for many reasons, but among them is like role modeling for students so that we can kind of bust the myth that no adults would want to eat these meals. We actually surveyed at a principals meeting last week. Out of the like 30 principals that responded, 100% of them said they would want this for their staff. So if there are any funders in the room beyond USDA, talk to me later. Okay.
Hi, thank you. Jenny Kedward from Hennepin County in the Twin Cities area. Love all the work you're doing. I'm thinking of older kids, middle, high school, and beyond. Have you worked with any skill building, of kitchen skill building, of, knife skills, cooking skills, besides like the FACS classes you might have or the home ec? Where have you seen that? As one, have you done it, and do you know who's done it? And two, have you seen any correlation or tie-in with preventing wasted food?
So we did that with our mobile kitchen. The kitchen that we have actually has 10 spaces on it. So we can roll it into a classroom. We don't usually do this with the littles because there are knives involved. But with an older student, we could do that, and it actually turned into a competition of them writing a recipe that could then be featured on school lunch across the district. So it was a big incentive for them to do it well. It had to meet the regulations and had to be servable and replicable. So there are lots of nuances to that. But yeah, it was a great way to get the high school students who already have a culinary program specifically involved. It was really fun.
I've run junior chef competitions with middle school age students where they were required to come up with a menu item that met the costing allocations and the USDA guidelines, and then had to prepare that in front of a group of professional chefs, and the winning recipe went on the menu as well. So that was a great educational piece.
I'll just add quickly that we, this year we worked closely with the student government, like the Associated Student Congress of this city school district, to really get to empower them with information to share with their peers around, the school meal landscape, the rules we have to follow, et cetera. And we're hoping to continue that this year. We catered their lunches at their student congress meeting. And so giving them, again, empowering them with information so that they can help us bust some myth was really helpful. So beyond knife skills, just giving them knowledge. And then we're, with funding from an EPA grant through WWF, we're hoping to launch a series of events next year for high school students. One will be a food environmental justice tour of Baltimore City. So they'll visit the incinerator, they'll visit urban farms, they'll visit sites like that to really, again, make it concrete, make parts of the food system very concrete for them, and see that the incinerator, as many of them already know, unfortunately, is in their backyard, literally. So making it very concrete. And then we do, as part of our farm to school programs, we have standard farm to classroom experiences that involve cooking. And I'll stop there.
Hi, Julia Lennon from We Don't Waste in Denver, Colorado. I was wondering how you've been successful incorporating food waste into the academic curriculum, because that's something we'd love to do in Denver.
So I am not an educator by trade, but we do have educators on staff at Clean Memphis and a director of education. It's a very robust program. They are in schools constantly teaching environmental science. They go classroom to classroom. They're in the classrooms that they serve every week or every other week. And it is aligned with the standards of the district, so they are getting science information, and the teachers absolutely love it because it's led by our educators. And we have found that there are some principals that are absolutely early adopters, and that's who you find first. And you start in those schools, and then you get those principals to tell their friends, and they'll become the secondary adopters. And so now our program is growing, so there are more schools interested than we even have educators for, so that's the next step.
Yeah, and again, if you're lucky to be internal within the district, we have the advantage again of we have the emails of all the academic leads, so we can meet with them and say, look, when your kindergarten students get to Unit X, they need please put in your scope and sequence that they click this link and request an herb garden kit, and we bring it to their classroom. Make it very simple for them, very clearly connected to what they're learning. So if you're able to just be aggressive and get in those meetings, hopefully they'll respond. And if you can make them free and flexible and really aligned to what they're already supposed to be teaching, that's when they'll sign up for whatever you're offering. Yeah.
One other quick example that we just went down and saw in person, which was in Gwinnett County outside of Atlanta. Lovin Elementary School has done an incredible job where the principal has supported a STEM teacher to be able to float amongst the different grades and be able to supplement and support these teachers in bringing in some of these food specific curriculum. And so I think that's another way, if we think about how do we spend, what did Pete say, $10 million? Thinking about how you can develop the necessary staffing, right, to be able to make these curriculum changes instead of just saying, hey, in addition to everything else, now teach X, Y, Z.
A couple of thoughts and then a question or two. I'm sad that none of the students could be here because I've been an advocate for 6 years trying to get composting and waste diversion in schools in Maryland. And if I didn't have students, I'm an old guy, I'm an environmentalist, I'm easily ignorable, but students are not. And it will be students who will champion this. There'll be students, when we took them to Annapolis last year, said, we're not asking for funding, we're demanding and we expect results. And it was that type of voice that really made the difference. we were a recipient of a $48,000 grant from WWF. It was difficult to implement. It's a 2-year program. We did it coming out of the pandemic. Schools signed up for it. They stopped. They didn't want to do it. These students found additional schools. They worked tirelessly to do it to make sure the thing was implemented. One of the things that happened was, and we're not talking too much about food waste that needs to be recovered. So no matter how good your food is, there's going to be food that's not getting eaten. Apples aren't going to get touched that aren't going to have forks in it, but they're recoverable. And we're not recovering it. So we took some of the money from the World Wildlife Fund and put mini refrigerators with glass doors in the cafeterias, because the health department is going to say, look, if a milk's sitting out for 2 hours, it could be spoiled. So, and if it's warm, they're not going to drink it anyway. Having a mini fridge that the kid can see, oh, well, look, there's a milk I want. I'm thirsty. I wasn't thirsty at 11, but I am now. They're taking it. And then maybe once a week you take that to a food bank, and it's remarkable. One school in Frederick County was throwing away 64 milks a day, 11,000 in a year, unopened. It was the WWF grant, and because of that, Montgomery County is installing mini refrigerators in all 214 schools.
And can you talk to them about I just think this would be very tangible for everybody. How much does that cost to get that push cart so that you can move it, and then that mini fridge that you found?
Push cart and mini fridge. A push cart, a really nice one's $115. A refrigerator, I'm actually working to get bulk purchases. I've been paying like $300 for a mini fridge from Lowe's or Home Depot. I think we could probably get that down to $200. Probably put an extended service contract on it so it goes bad. But food recovery is absolutely the lowest hanging fruit. And no matter how good your food is, there's going to be stuff that is not getting eaten. Unfortunately, I don't see how Frederick County is going to do food prep. They don't have enough staff. They just got a $50 million budget cut, so they're not going to be receptive to any new innovation for food services. But the food recovery is really the key component here. And we installed a mini fridge in one school, and they unplugged it. I'm like, why? It's like, well, because we're going to get sued. It's like, you got to know the Emerson Good Samaritan Food Recovery Act indemnifies you from that. So it's amazing from school to school, people don't know. And it's no longer okay not to know. I think one of the most important things we do is we need to really educate. Please provide better food, because some of the food that's being served in Frederick County I wouldn't eat. And my kids are finicky, my grandkids. But the key here is to understand just how much food's being wasted and how much can be recovered and taken to a food bank to feed hungry people. Yeah. So
Thank you, Joe.
One last question. Composting trays. Are you composting them?
Good question, and the answer is, for the most part, no. So
okay, it's very sexy to get compostable stuff, but if you're not composting it kind of doesn't make a difference, does it?
Understand the irony.
So we need to do all of that.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad, back to your point about no matter how good our food is, even at the best restaurants, there's a lot of food waste. So I'm glad I realized also as we were closing that we really hadn't talked much about recovery and composting. I think those are also part of the solutions. We're focused on prevention because that's what the scale tells us to do, and we know that that's the biggest bang for the buck. But we also really need to be facing the reality, and especially in the education, the educational opportunity when it comes to recovery is really great. Like giving kids the opportunity to connect what they're seeing as wasted, blah, blah, blah. Is really impactful. I think focusing, when we're thinking about share tables, like I said, it needs to be flexible and look different at every school, and thinking first and foremost about how we can help the school meet their goals. Many of our schools already have food pantries. They already have some kind of backpack program. They're already buying, the principals buying with their own money, like snacks for kids. So how can we show them that actually we have a source of food that's recovered and that can, help them meet their goals? So I think you raise a really good point. If it's not, it's maybe the food bank or whatever.
And kids, the blessings in a backpack, that's great, but they don't get perishable foods. The amazing thing is when you see 60 milks and all these apples and fresh fruit that's being thrown away, a lot of food banks don't get that. So it's really critical to try to get the non-perishable stuff. So.
Thank you, Joe.
Can I speak to that really quickly too? So we also work with the share tables, and currently the process at Memphis Shelby County Schools is after the meal period is over, things have to be discarded for all the things that you just talked about, Joe, because of the food safety. And so we are working as part of our World Wildlife Partnership to implement the refrigerators and the ability to do that after the classroom or after the lunch period. One piece of that as well that we've worked into our plan is finding someone outside of the cafeteria staff who will monitor it, and a lot of times that's the someone from the social worker or someone from the administration, and working in a stipend for that person to make it worthwhile up front. Because cafeteria staff, they will tell you they don't have time, and they're not lying to you about that. And the teachers don't have time, and they're not lying to you about that either. So you've got to find the person who wants to be committed, parent, volunteer, whatever.
Hi, my name is Paul. I'm actually following Joe's footsteps. I'm 2 years into this food waste journey, and I also got a grant from WWF, and they've been wonderful. And we were comparing notes over breakfast this morning, Joe and I, and one of the things that I think states that are just getting into this are experiencing is there are barriers of entry. You know, I don't have the luxury of having an Avika and Angelina kids like that going forward, but I will eventually. But what I'm interested in is the group open to creating standards. So what I mean by that is, so I get a grant from WWF, I have a sheet I send out to all the schools, and I say, hey, you have up to $2,000 to $2,500 to spend on stipends, supplies, lesson plans, and so forth. And I'm guiding them, but what I'm finding is teachers don't have the time to do the research. So what I'm proposing, I talked to SJ, who works with WWF on this, is to come up with standards and basically say, here's a cheat sheet. We're going to recommend to you, K through 6, bins that are about this size, 20 pounds or less, so the kids can not only see what they throw away, but when the kids see what they throw away, it goes off in the head. For the older kids, you know, bins that are up this high, and so forth. So weight scales, refrigerators, all these things. If we recommend best practices and we can drive down the cost, when I give that $2,000 to that school, I can say, hey, your operational cost went from $500 down to $300, and I can give you more money towards stipends and lesson plans to drive the cadence in school. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are about that.
That's a great idea.
Fully supported by Ann.
Yeah. No, because we spend a lot of time trying to think through like what is useful for school. You know, we're thinking at the district level. It would be helpful to have that higher up. And again, like we want to make it flexible so that each school, if they want to customize it, whatever, make their own sign, they can. But how can we make it really, really easy for them to just, replicate?
If I could just quickly add on, I love the network building that's been happening, right? The fact that, you know, you've all done this, you've been in the trenches, you know how to get these cost efficiencies to work. And that's one thing that, you know, at WWF we're really passionate about, is supporting all of you that are doing this work so that for the new school that's just about to get going, they can very quickly follow this, you know, these paths of least resistance and really know what it's going to take when they have to go make that ask. So great point, Paul.
Hello everyone, my name is Eric Dawson. I'm an educator and farmer for the Yellow Farmhouse Education Center in Stonington, Connecticut. So my question, so you mentioned like having farmers and nutritionists lead like taste tests in some of the schools. Have you gone about forming relationships with these farmers, not only for like local procurement, but also getting farmers like actively to like want to come into the schools? Have you gone about forming those relationships?
One of the things that's worked the best for me is going to your local farmers market and just trying to make connections and talk to people about what you're trying to do in your school food program and ask them what they could possibly grow for you.
So we, at the school district, there is a farmer on staff who worked in the farm to school program, and he was a great contact for all of the local farmers. It's a pretty small world, just like this is kind of a pretty small world, and so we used him to help us recruit as well.
And I would just quickly add, if you're at like a bigger district or an urban district where it may be more logistically complicated to get students to meet farmers, even if they can't come into your schools, we have one big produce supplier that sources from lots of little and big farms across the country and around the world. And we've actually like written into their contract an educational component so that they know that X times a year we want to bring either students or our staff to see the produce up front, to see, you know, close up how their logistics centers work. Students can see that the same food, that the same trays of produce that are, or same cases of produce that are going onto the trucks to the schools it's the same cases that are also going into Whole Foods and whatever grocery store they shop at or whatever restaurants they may eat at. So trying to make that, I think, connection is really, really important, but doesn't have to be necessarily with like the lovely small farmer, you know, in your county if that's not feasible.
It's the last question, so no pressure.
Fantastic. Want to show a lot of appreciation to all of you and your expertise. I was keeping notes on my phone and I could barely keep up. I work in Connecticut, and what I do is we're a food waste hauler. We're called Blue Earth Compost. One of the things that we've been working on is bringing holistic programs into schools from the standpoint of composting, but also food recovery, food sharing, and getting the education between the cafeteria and the classroom. And I have a very practical question that hopefully I can get some help on. One of the things that we've been running into as it regards to food recovery is that a lot of the school districts that we work in are that they get free lunch. And so they've been worried about basically the, for lack of a better word, like the pipeline of taking in the resources from the USDA for the free lunch programs, and then that food ending up at a food recovery organization outside of the school. And they're worried not so much about the liability side, but the funding side, that they might lose funding from the USDA if that happens. Have any of you ever run into that? Is there anywhere that I could, any resource that I can give to these districts to show, no, it's okay?
The USDA fully supports this food not being wasted, and so the USDA, the child nutrition website, FNS. Oh, help, Alex. It has a full support of food recovery, and each district will have some sort of regulatory auditor that they are used to working with. So in Memphis, ours lives nearby, and if they connect with that person, ours is through the Tennessee Department of Education. If they connect with that person, they'll be well versed on their protections. They will not lose funding for it. It is fully supported.
Okay, so there's a state agent, there's a state representative?
There will be a state representative that conducts their regular audits to make sure they're doing everything appropriately, and that person will be their connection to both the state agency and to the USDA.
But let's follow up too as well, because we're actually going to be working on a case study that documents how, I mean, and Joe brought this up, how schools can not just rescue food to distribute to students in their own schools, but then increase the amount that they're donating back to the community. And so I think that, you know, we've seen plenty of our districts around the country do this successfully, so I'm happy to make those connections as well. Okay, let's give our panelists a round of applause one last time. Thank you all so much for coming, and we'll be around for the next few minutes if you all have questions you want to come up. All right, thank you.